Every child could sing verses about the Sky Ripper, but ancient codices held hints of other things. A stone that ate souls, a ruby that drank blood, a jewel only a righteous man could give away.
Were all these things the Iblis stone? Long hidden in a buried temple? Another ancient item that was only resurfacing now? Drawn up from the deeps by the Emperor's horrific rituals? The air here tasted bitter. The steps were too tall for a person. The entire place felt restless, like it had been vexed to nightmare under the dust, waiting for its hour to come around at last. Ravens were already here, cawing in frustration. They were still searching for a way in. Good. Then he hadn't come too late.
There had to be something useful in these things, didn't there? That could come in handy in a pinch.
Is a very cool sword, thought Gnarl. No, seriously. He couldn't feel his paw anymore. Ice walls only let you through if they knew you were cool. Don't look down, he thought.
Can I borrow that?
This was definitely better than pulling yourself up in a bucket. Boy, someone has spent a lot of money for a graduation present. How could a temple to Iblis still even exist? The Transcendent Emperor had destroyed all the shrines of the lost gods after exiling them. Had it been buried in that long-ago battle? Or had Iblis foreseen his fate and hidden it from his enemy?
Welcome to Earth.
Bernardo told the corpses. It was something he'd seen in a play once. The Ravens, at least, could not get past this point. Obviously, the temple builders knew how to deal with tomb raiders. Renato hated cannon traps. Also, who reloaded these things anyway? He never figured that part out.
It was a stone of the purest blackness. It reflected no light, like a void made solid. Nervous, he picked it up. Who said that? It was the stone. Eager, thirsty. That seemed tempting and terribly wrong. Zenobia was the Emperor's greatest general and a potent witch. But they had been close once, and Renato wasn't sure he really wanted to be Emperor. Why not capture the core of Sky Ripper instead? It was the eye of a lost god torn out by the transcendent Emperor to power his greatest weapon. "It's the core," said the stone anxiously. The stone bothered him. He hated being told what to do. Wasn't that why he joined the rebellion? Wasn't that why he'd refused to be a soldier? He'd agreed to come on board only if he could freelance.
The stone felt a bit clingy. The sage Calaveras had told him where to find the Sky Ripper, a weapon capable of challenging the gods. Even without its armature, the core would still possess great power.
He would go there. The moment he landed the Farfarer, Renato had a rare feeling of regret. It's not too late, he thought. He could turn around and sail for Zenobia's island. He frowned. Wait a minute. He didn't want to kill Zenobia, did he? Sure, technically she was the enemy, but they'd been at sword food school together. They'd never been lovers, but somehow they'd been closer. She'd told him every secret about herself. Except the biggest one, that she was the Emperor's daughter. No. Kill Zenobia, whispered the stone. Before it's too late.
In a swirl of newly remembered knowledge. He needed to focus. Got rather well, actually.
There was something sour in the air. Like the earth had ruptured over something that had been fermenting for a very long time.
Firewalls only let you through if they think you're hot enough. You almost never saw wild gogglers together like this. The toads had to train them not to peck each other to death. So these had to be Imperial gogglers. That meant ravens were up ahead. Whee! What's there?
The stone hadn't lied about what it could do for him. With each raven he cut down, he felt a jolt of power flowing into his arm. "You're weak," whispered the stone. "The core will kill you." "Are you afraid of it?" "No, don't be ridiculous," it chuckled. But it's unstable. It will poison you so much as carry it, and if you try to use it, it will explode catastrophically. Bernardo did not trust rocks that talked in his head. He went onwards.
He was practically sure he'd find something useful in one of these things.
This couldn't be good for global warming.
Well, he'd always wanted to do that. surprisingly unwounded. As he approached the core, the stone became hysterical.
No! It's too much power. We will rip a hole in space and time.
He had a sudden vision of plunging his gauntlet into the core and dying in anguish. That wasn't his vision, was it? The stone had sent him its darkest fears, hadn't it? He had a sudden impulse to do exactly that. He raised his right fist and plunged it into the core. There was a rush of light. He thought he could hear the stone screaming. And then he passed out. When Ronaldo came to, the core was gone. But the Iblis stone was no longer black, but glowing with a blue light. And it was silent. "I can't hear you," he sang out, and "Yoo-hoo!" It didn't answer. "Ha!" he said. He had defeated the demonic gem with the power of his mind. He felt invincible. It was time to attack the Imperial outpost on the Nexus. Take the battle to the enemy. But among the huge crystals, there was also an observatory. A wise man would probably ask the scientists exactly what he had first. How wise was he? As the Farfarer sailed towards the Nexus, Bernardo wondered if the core had been created to silence the stone, or even to feed its hunger. Honestly, he didn't care. He felt terrific, and he appreciated the quiet inside his head. The Nexus was infested with ravens, but that didn't bother Ronaldo. With each death, the converted Iblis stone in his gauntlets glowed brighter, and he felt stronger. Wow. He was getting a bit bloodthirsty, wasn't he?
Well, he wasn't worried. He was a warrior. They're supposed to be bloodthirsty.
Once you try it, you're hooked. This chest was filled with old concert t-shirts, and something useful. Your aerobics craze. Am I right? The core, absorbed in the stone, was doing its job perfectly. Bernardo could feel a little eldritch jolt every time he downed a raven, but then it flowed into the glowing stone the way water flows down a riverbed. It all felt perfectly natural, as if all his life, this was what he had been meant to do. Oh, this really didn't have much in the way of safety features, did it?
Yes, please. Renato tore through the last remaining guards at the outpost like hot coffee through snow. There was a fire speaker toad here. He called the council speaker. He knew she would be thrilled. And she was. She wanted him to come back to base. They had plans to discuss and a medal to give him. A large, golden medal. Great, said Renato. Let's talk about who else I can kill. Then the fire speaker croaked again.
Hello, Renato.
It said.
If you get sick of slaughtering second-rate birds in the Nexus, I am waiting for you in the mountains.
Zenobia. A witch taunting him. With the stone, he'd finally be her match. Zenobia was taunting him. No doubt she hoped to lure him into a trap. Well, he was nobody's sucker. Especially not hers. He carried victory in his gauntlet. He would go where the council pointed him. As he set foot on the island, Renato felt energized, like when he was hunting or dancing. Then he smelt it. The stench of ravens. It was a good thing he was here, too, before they tripped over the secret base. He was really saving the council toad's bacon, so to speak. Renato had been the terror of the sandcastles when he was two.
Renato wondered if it wasn't cheaper to build bridges and stairs. Odd that they never locked these things. He wished there were more pylons he could use the hook on. They really needed to construct additional pylons.
See? Renato was a hero of the revolution. He deserved a medal. Soon, he deserved every medal they had, and hopefully one big medal ceremony in front of everybody with trumpets so everyone could know what he'd accomplished.
These things really slice like ham. Long stairs. So he was close to the rebel base. Nothing was on fire. So far, so good.
Those flames really bring out your eyes.
He hadn't noticed that path before. Inside the rebel base, Renato was invited to the council speaker's private chambers.
So, this is the Iblis Stone? He said. I can feel its power. Renato told her how he had fed the core to the stone and made something even more useful than either. Crazy like a fox, she croaked. And Renato chuckled as if he'd never heard the joke before. We've given you the best quarters and a bottle of Tantalonian firewater, all for you. So they'd remembered. He woke in the morning with the sweetest of hangovers.
But the Iblis stone was gone from his gauntlet.
The corridors were empty, except for a few rebels who looked just as hungover as him. Come on, you'll miss the battle, they yelled. Renato added sail as the Farfarers scudded across the sky. Who could have taken the Iblis stone? Was it some Imperial spy? He would find him, and kill him, and take the stone back. Renato had a bad taste in his mouth. He was killing ravens, but it wasn't fun. It felt like a chore. Oh, Renato hated chores. As a fox kid, he'd gone hungry rather than clean his room. He still didn't clean his room, he just moved house every few years. Who had the Iblis stone anyway? Up ahead, he could hear screaming and croaking and cawing. But who was winning?
Every day he was getting better and better. Burnt fur. If he ever had a castle, he was going to hide his stuff better. It was definitely easier to fight inanimate objects. Where did that go to? Going to hurt. Actually, it already did. Once again, Renato was dead right. Or actually just dead. As she ran forward, Renato noticed that some ravens were starting to ignore him. Just running away. Who are they running from? Some hero of the revolution? If some other so-called hero of the revolution had the stone and tried to take his victory and his medals, Renato was going to be seriously pissed off. He was the hero, not some other bozo. Renato wondered if his future self had commissioned these poles. never felt a little better. Don't look down, he told himself. Don't look down. Finally, Renato came to the Emperor's ship. Zenobia lay dead in front of it. The ship was a wreck. Ravens lay dead, sprawled everywhere. Bloody feathers spattered across the deck and the dock. The council speaker came out. She was waving a sword around like a flag. "Look at me, Renato!" she croaked. The Iblis stone on the sword was black as coal. "Now I will be Empress, and all shall tremble before me," she croaked. So the stone had her. It was in her brain, whining for blood. "I'm afraid I can't allow that," said Renato, and moved to fight her. Toads are not usually good with swords. Something about the footwork. And the council speaker was not even a warrior. She was always tripping over things, which is quite an impressive achievement when you're a toad. Yet somehow, she was pressing Renato backwards as he desperately tried to keep her sword away from his throat. "Look, why don't you keep the stone?" he asked. "You deserve it." "Blood and souls for Iblis," she croaked. "Blood and souls." She got under his guard with her sword. It was just the tip. But sometimes just the tip is enough. He could feel his soul being sucked into the stone. As he died, he felt embarrassed more than anything else. And just like that, he was alive again, and back on the Farfarer, still fleeing burning Ubar. The book was still open before him. So, the book was a portal. It took you to the future when your destinies would branch. He had failed, and died 3 times. But he'd learned another true thing. The Iblis Stone was evil. It would try to corrupt anyone who used it. But he was starting to feel like he was getting the hang of this. There was a way through to victory. He could feel it. He just had to keep running the path of Destinies. With that, the book fluttered back to the beginning, and he fell into it. The clouds parted over the Isles of Boreas. It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game-changer. Pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced. Renata knew that using it could go catastrophically wrong, but he was sure he could figure out how to use it safely. Also, a temple had risen out of empty desert. The Iblis Stone was hidden there. It was a dangerous artifact. It could corrupt its user into a bloodthirsty monster. Maybe he could find a way to use it, to take its power without surrendering to its wickedness. And also, his old friend Lapino needed rescuing. Of course, Renato had a pretty strong suspicion that Lapino had betrayed the rebellion. But could Renato really leave an old friend to the Ravens? Ah, Lapino. Apparently, the Mad Rabbit had sold a Pegasus that he did not exactly own. Lapino always wiggled out of trouble, given time. Lapino had apparently managed to confuse the judge by arguing that he hadn't actually stolen a winged horse. He'd only sold it. But wait, where was the prison? The village was empty. Had everybody fled the Ravens? There were still so many games to play, Renato thought as he died. The Ravens had taken the town. Renato had seen villages emptied like this. All the people taken away to be sacrificed in the Emperor's secret rituals. Renato hoped the people were just hiding. Renato thought of the Iblis Stone and shivered. He had no business messing with ancient, cruel artifacts. What he needed was his friends around him. Clear eyes, full hearts, can't lose.
Bernardo at Hot Potato.
A chest that shiny deserved to be opened.
Ravens were landing everywhere. The advance guard. He'd better get moving. If they got to Lupino first, they'd eat him for breakfast. Or a snack. Ravens weren't picky. If they got hungry, they sometimes forgot to interrogate their prisoners. Even top spies like Lupino.
Well, unless he really was a traitor, obviously. Then they'd probably pin a medal on his chest.
Fresh meat! Dirty and bloody, Bernardo finally reached Lupino. The rabbit was practicing his shuffle. Bernardo recognized the cards. It was Lupino's favorite deck. Oh, I thought you were in danger. I am. The Ravens are coming. Oh, the prison thing. Right, yeah, we see this guard owed me 53 ducats, so we made a deal. They're very reasonable people, actually, for weasels. Now, I got a brilliant plan to kidnap Zenobia.
We capture Zenobia, we find out what she knows. And that's the whole war right there. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy.
Capture the Emperor's greatest general, who also happened to be a deadly sorcerer and own his only daughter? That would be worth it. On the other hand, he could still get to the core of the Sky Ripper, even if he couldn't get the whole thing. It must have great power. To make the Sky Ripper, the Transcendent Emperor had wrapped an armature around the eye of a god. Bernardo had already let that armature slip away to save Lupino's life. But even its core, the eye torn from a god, surely they could fashion a great weapon from that.
The core of the Sky Ripper? Lupino's excited.
That's an actual thing that we could just go and get.
You've been busy.
He sure had. Renato told him all the things he'd been up to. Soon they got to talking about old times, about wages they'd won and lost, and scrapes they'd barely got out of. It was good to be back with his friend. True, the core was capable of terrible, uncontrollable destruction. But this time, he was sure it would work great. It's beautiful here, thought Renato. It was nice to be back with his old war buddy. All right. Lapino was a traitor. But still, he was good company. There was something sour in the air. Like the earth had ruptured over something that had been fermenting for a very long time.
I need a new rug for me nest, said the lead raven.
Renato felt wrong all over. He could feel an almost palpable sickness in the air. And if the land could have tumors, they would look like these monstrous crystals. The forest was quieter than it had been. There were insects, but few birds, if you didn't count the ravens. Renato smelled sick animals and dying ones. No healthy ones. I'm getting a bad feeling about this, Renato thought. Maybe Lapino was right. Maybe we should have kidnapped Zenobia instead of coming here. As he held the radiant icosahedron, Renato felt queasy, like dozens of tiny worms were nibbling his insides. It wasn't healthy to be so close to the eye of a god. How could he use it? He could take it to the observatory. The scientists there could tell him how to harness its ancient power. But honestly, Renato ached to get away from it. He brought the core back with him to the Farfarer. But honestly, Renato ached to be rid of it.
Tell you what, said Lapino. I'll take it to the observatory. You attack the Imperial outpost.
The Imperial outpost was a vital communications node. Taking it could shatter the Empire's ability to coordinate. And it would be full of secret plans and maps and maybe even rebel prisoners. It was a good target for a hero like Renato.
But what if Lapino lost the core to the Empire? That could be a good thing, couldn't it? Was Renato ready to take that risk? Maybe it was better if he brought the core to the scientists himself.
Trust me, Renardo, you won't regret this. I'll treat the core like it was my own baby daughter.
As the Farfarer died towards the Nexus, Lapino was jumping up and down with excitement. "Stop rabbiting around," Renardo said. Lapino just stared at him. The moment the ship landed, Lapino leapt off the ship.
As Lapino vanished into the wilds of the Nexus, Renardo vaguely remembered Lapino had a baby daughter, didn't he? And he told her mother he was going out to get some Easter eggs, and he'd never come back. But Renardo was relieved not to carry the core anymore. He was already feeling better. And who knows, maybe this time Lapino would get it right. And if Renardo could take the outpost, he'd have access to all the Empire's communications in the sector, right?
Imagine if you built a house on one of these things. Oh, that would be amazing. It would be like having a boat.
Renardo caught his breath. His joints still hurt, but he couldn't feel the poison in his system anymore. He'd let the armature slip out of his hands to save his friend Lapino. Of course he had to let Lapino take the core. The rebellion needed every man doing his duty. And the rabbit would be no good taking on an Imperial outpost, right?
Renardo had rescued Lapino because he was an old friend. And then he'd sent him off with the poisonous core. And he'd probably bungled the mission, too. What had he been thinking? That he'd have a romp in the Imperial outpost?
This sword from the mystical East could make time itself slow for you. Renardo hoped his mother wasn't watching.
Renato took the outpost with a song in his heart. Soon, he was stuffing his sack with key messages from and to the fleet. Then the fire speaker toad chortled a new message. The observatory had been sacked by ravens. Lapino and all the scientists had been taken to the mountains. Why? Why had he trusted Lapino again? And now the Empire had the core. Renato hailed the rebel base to warn them. But their far speaker didn't crouch back. Was the base under attack too? Who knew what was going on at the base? But he knew what the Ravens would do to Lapino if Renato didn't rescue him fast. Well, actually, he wasn't exactly sure. It kind of depended on whether Lapino was a traitor or not. Renato just couldn't bring himself to believe that. What are old friends for, if not to need rescuing every few days? Renato felt a twinge of doubt. Should he have gone to the base? No. Logically, wherever they'd taken Lapino was probably where they took the core, right? Oh, why couldn't Lapino have just, for once, not got himself captured? Was that too much to ask? He shouldn't be too hard on the rabbit. No, he meant well, and he was insanely brave. You had to admire that. There was a cat in this one, and something useful. Oops. Thought, Renato? Of all the artisans he was creating employment for. Truly, he was a job creator. He'd once met a pirate captain who used hooks to get around his ship. What was his name again? really ought to put a railing on this thing, he thought.
Lapino, anyway. There was no sign of him or the ravens who'd captured him. Just rocks and snow and the usual scouts. No sign of the core either. Was this a wild rabbit chase? Oh, trust Lapino to screw up even getting captured. But what was this rebellion for anyway? Well, Lapino's a useless goof. But he was a friend. If friends didn't matter anymore, what was the point of winning this war?
Renata felt ready to take on new powers. Sparkly, thought Renato.
But was this fruit local? That's what Renato wanted to know.
You never knew where the road would take you, thought Renato. When I build my castle, thought Renato, all my gates are going to open with buttons, and all the levers will drop rocks at your head. The rock felt hot in his hand. He could feel its secret power. Felt like Renato thought of the choices he had made so far. Rescuing a friend and then sending him to be captured. Recovering a super weapon and letting it fall into enemy hands. Risking an assault on an enemy base for military secrets and then failing to deliver them to the rebellion. Well, he was alive, at least. At the end of the mountain path, Renato came to a clearing. There was a campfire, raven feathers, and... oh, Lupino's lucky deck of cards. Well, that wasn't good. Renato hoped Lupino would not try to cheat his captors at cards. Ravens were much better than weasels at counting, and they had a very poor sense of humor. Then, he saw what he had hoped never to see. Fresh scraps of rabbit fur. Ragged and bloody, ravens would eat anything.
By Grabthar's hammer!
Renato screamed at the sky.
I will avenge you!
The rebels had assembled their fleet. Ahead, the clouds were dark with Imperial ships. If he could reach the Emperor before the rest of the rebels did, maybe he could settle this without too much bloodshed. He set sail, and the Farfarer shot forward. Poor Lupino had never been a great warrior. The mad rabbit was good for a lark and a laugh. And a pint. The thought of ravens eating him made Renato furious. The way they were eating up the land. The way the Emperor was eating up the people with his new, bloodthirsty ways. He would make them all pay.
The road less traveled, thought Renardo. How intriguing. There was blood on this one, so it hadn't saved its owner. He had given up every objective to save his friend. He had given up the armature, the core, the gem, and even Zenobia. He loved Lupino, he realized. And now the rabbit was gone. A hero looks out for his friends, even when they're gone. He would send Lupino an honor guard of ravens to serve him in the halls of the Valiant. He would avenge him. He was sort of yanking his own chain, wasn't he? Well, they really needed to redecorate anyway. No skateboarding, the sign said. Finally, he reached the Emperor's ship. And there was Lapino, surrounded by ravens. He was alive! They'd eaten some other rabbit. "I'll save you!" he shouted with joy and flung himself at the ravens. "Aw, you shouldn't have," said Lapino when the last raven was down. Renato threw his arms around his best friend. "I had to come. I love you, man. You really, really shouldn't have," said Lapino. And Renato felt a rather sharp pain in his back. As he collapsed, Lapino took the dagger out of Renato's back and wiped it off on Renato's sleeve. "Why, you always have to be the hero. Brave Renato, epic Renato, super sexy Renato, and I'm sick of it." As Renato died, all he could think was, damn it, fooled again. And he hadn't learned anything new this time. He'd done the same thing twice, yet expected a different outcome. There would be a way to win. Renato could feel it. He'd have to explore choices he'd never made before he could figure it all out, though. And with that, the book's pages fluttered to the beginning once again. And he fell. The clouds parted over the Isles of Boreas. It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game changer. Pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced. Renato knew that using it could go catastrophically wrong, but he was sure he could figure out how to use it safely. Also, a temple had risen out of empty desert. The Iblis stone was hidden there. It was a dangerous artifact. It could corrupt its user into a bloodthirsty monster. Maybe he could find a way to use it, to take its power without surrendering to its wickedness. And also, his old friend Lapino needed rescuing. Of course, Renato had a pretty strong suspicion that Lapino had betrayed the rebellion. But could Renato really leave an old friend to the Ravens? Lapino. Apparently, the mad rabbit had sold a Pegasus. Lapino had apparently managed to confuse the judge by arguing that he hadn't actually stolen a winged horse. He'd only sold it. But wait, where was the prison? The village was empty. Had everybody fled the Ravens? Hey! Hey, a workbench! He could try out his new bling.
ravens had taken the town. Renato had seen villages emptied like this. All the people taken away to be sacrificed in the Emperor's secret rituals. Renato hoped the people were just hiding.
Smashing things was fun.
Renato thought of the Iblis stone and shivered. He had no business messing with ancient, cruel artifacts. Wasn't needed, because his friends around. Clear eyes, full hearts, absolutely. He could sense the jewel's power. He had a feeling they were going to be great friends.
Boys! Go on to lead, Raven.
Ravens were landing everywhere. The advance guard. He'd better get moving. If they got to Lapino first, they'd eat him for breakfast. Or a snack. Ravens weren't picky. If they got hungry, they sometimes forgot to interrogate their prisoners. Even top spies like Lapino.
Well, unless he really was a traitor, obviously. Then they'd probably pin a medal on his chest. There was still no sign of Lapino. Not a hair, not a pellet. Was he hiding in the cemetery further down the road? That didn't seem like him.
Was that your shield?
Lapino would betray him. But now Renato knew that. What would Lapino do if he knew that Lapino was going to betray him? Well, he'd concoct some crazy scheme, wouldn't he? That used Lapino's betrayal against him and it would blow up in his face. Maybe he was overthinking this. That would be a first. Had that door been opened before? Dirty and bloody, Renato finally reached Lapino. The rabbit was practicing his shuffle. Renato
We capture Zenobia, we find out what she knows. And that's the whole war right there. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy.
Capture the Emperor's greatest general, who also happened to be a deadly sorcerer and, oh, his only daughter? That would be worth it. On the other hand, he could still get to the core of the Sky Ripper, even if he couldn't get the whole thing. It must have great power. Zenobia wasn't just the Emperor's daughter, of course. She'd been Renato's best friend in Sword Fu school. And you're still mad for her, the rabbit reminded him. They'd been close. She'd told him things no one else knew.
The city was already under Zenobia's control. I had to admire her efficiency. Renato shivered at the thought of Zenobia at the mercy of the interrogators. Could he really turn her over to them? But this was war. It wasn't meant to be pretty.
These were really nice chests. He should take one home, he thought.
What was really fun was hooking yourself onto a moving ship. Remembering all his old tricks, and some new ones. Now, he really ought to ask for a raise. I wonder what happens if I go that way. This jewel was more than sparkly. It had arcane power and an engraving. To Cindy? Was Lupino urging him to capture Zenobia? Obviously it was a trap. But you never knew how Lupino thought. Sometimes his plans were so convoluted they did the exact opposite to what Lupino wanted. Yeah, there must be some way to play on that, Renato thought. Hey, why don't you guys fight in groups? Oh, I know. Because there's no I in team.
So, what's this plan of yours?
Use me as bait.
Said Lupino. And he outlined a slightly complicated plan that involved geese, a net, setting the Farfarer a little bit on fire, Lupino dressing as an old blind toad, and Renato hiding inside a monstrous watermelon.
What could possibly go wrong? Thought Renato.
Oh,
Go ahead. I'm sure you know better, said Lupino. It would be fun to try out that one. And here was a handy workbench. Cool. Wish I could do that. Renato slinked through Zenobia's ship, making no sound at all. Where were her guards? Finally, he reached her bedroom. She was curled up at her bed. Oh, he'd forgotten how beautiful she was. How sleek. How soft. He tapped her on the shoulder with his sword. She became smoke. And he noticed he had a blade to his throat. Stay a while. Heard a familiar voice. Did you really think you could capture me? Zenobia said as her ship lifted off. Now I just wanted some privacy. Renato said, did you ever wonder why the Emperor adopted you? And he told her why. His Imperial Majesty wanted to bring the lost gods back. They could make him immortal. But to seal the bargain, he needed a sacrifice. Someone who truly loved him. You're lying. She was furious. You can't prove that. I can. And so, they set sail for the Nexus. The scientists at the observatory have resurrected one of his victims. Well, he's not exactly alive, but he can talk, and he can't lie. You took a big risk. You know, I could just cast a spell to make you tell me where the rebel base is. And you wouldn't consider that cheating? She frowned. Ugh, fine. Let's go get your witness. The rebellion had started after atrocities that the Empire hushed up. Renato had rescued a priest whose order had been massacred for one book. He had slept in a burnt village. Dead kittens and puppies had come to tell him what the Emperor had done to them. They didn't want their things broken. They really ought to make them stronger. The new pathway made Renato curious. This stone was incredibly valuable. Renato could sense it. Also, it still had its price tag. caught up with him. Don't you think I'd know if my father started practicing black magic? Why? Would you want to join in?
Oh, no, I'd destroy his books and...
All right, I suppose I wouldn't. She stopped, troubled. He ran on. What did you do if one of these platforms stalled? The scientists on this island had been investigating the Emperor's dark ritual on their own. They were neutral in the civil war engulfing the Empire, but they could see that the dark magics the old Toad had loosed were changing the world. Bernardo hoped he and Zenobia weren't putting them in danger.
Checked to make sure his sword was still working. Yep.
The observatory was a burning hulk. Dead scientists and black feathers everywhere. The Ravens had taken care to burn the reanimated witness to cinders. Zenobia stared around, shocked. The scientists had been neutral. They had no part in the rebellion. "Take me to your council," she said, shaken. "I have things to tell them." It was what Renato had gambled on. The Zenobia would turn against her father once she knew his madness. But the rebel base was secret. Could he really risk taking the Emperor's daughter there? Renato reached Lupino by Farspeaker Toad.
No. We should take her to the base.
Insisted Lupino. "I don't trust her. Nobody changes sides that fast," said Renato.
I better go to the base. Let them know you've got her.
Lupino said. For some reason, Renato wasn't sure that was a good idea. "Just meet me at the far side of the mountains. There's a shuttle here I can take."
Always has to be your way, doesn't it?
Said Lupino. Zenobia was still shaking as they got out. "I didn't know," she said. "The Ravens kept it secret. At first they sacrificed prisoners, then villages near the frontier, and then an orphanage. Kittens and puppies. Sometimes he'd come back to the palace and it was like there were glowing things behind his eyes. I was so busy." "I'll clear a path for us," Renato told Zenobia, "so the Ravens don't see you." "I need more materials," thought Renato. "This is yours," said Renato, but he couldn't hear his enemy's answer. Breeze through his armor. Oh dear, that wasn't good. It was time for a little exploration. Once, Renato had opened a chest, and a jack-in-the-box jumped out. Jack-in-the-boxes, they gave them the Wiggins. Zenobia came up as he massaged his sore arm. Her eyes were wet. He's been saying strange things. He asked me to do experiments, and some were wrong.
They are banished, right? Said Renato. Gone forever. I mean, he couldn't actually bring the old gods back, could he? She didn't answer him. That frightened him more than anything.
There was an inscription on the platform. Balaleka lessons, with an address. Couldn't they have put in an elevator? Or a giant eagle? Or something? Weird how portals never told you where they went to. And it would kill them to put up a sign or something?
magical jewel. Bernardo couldn't wait to find a workbench.
Spell even worse. Needed some way to break the ice with this wall, so to speak.
Hey, what do ravens say when they die? Never mind. I'll wait.
Maybe I should follow my nose, thought Renato. What was the point of this gate? Did you think no one would notice the lever? Renato wondered if he should have taken Zenobia to the rebel base for real. Maybe she wasn't playing him after all. After the bleak talk about the Emperor's dark secret, he was regretting his suspicion. They came up on an empty shack. He gestured her in. "Where's the base?" she asked, confused. "I thought we could talk a bit first."
Oh, you think I'm playing you? She was furious. I'm betraying my father who picked me out of an alley, and you think I'm playing you?
She lashed out. Her claws sliced fire into his face. Energy boiled in her other paw. But before she could kill him, he slashed his sword into her heart. She staggered. "I could have loved you, you son of a bitch." And then she died.
Renato stood there for hours, unable to move. Finally, a ship landed near him. Lapino had brought the Farfarer. On board the Farfarer, Lapino couldn't stop grinning.
I can't believe you actually killed her.
Why didn't I trust her? Renato said. All he could feel was emptiness.
You killed the Emperor's daughter.
You might want to run for it, if you care whether you live or die, that is. Since Renato didn't, he grabbed the wheel, and he sailed for the Imperial fleet. Renato had never felt worse. Zenobia had listened to him. He had trusted him. She had opened her eyes to her father's evil. Done everything he had hoped for. He had taken her to a dirty shack. Was he so used to lying that he couldn't trust even the girl he had always loved?
Slice the wings off a fly in the air. Not that he would. It's sort of mean, really. What's behind door number 2? He could see the rebels reeling back as he plunged into the ranks of the Ravens.
He'd had to kill the girl he loved. But he'd also blown the biggest opportunity they could have had, to turn the Emperor's daughter against him. Oh, Renata could only laugh miserably. He was taking crazy chances now, swinging wildly. He expected the Ravens to take him at any moment, but they were running in fear. No one wants to fight a man who doesn't care if he lives. No one wants to fight a hero. This is quite a view, he thought. Soon he'd confront the Emperor. Funny that this whole war had come about because the Emperor feared death. And now it was coming for him. There was some sort of lesson there, wasn't there? He was exhausted. Could barely think. He wanted to stop thinking. The rebels were already finished, and he was the last. The Ravens were coming for him personally now, in waves. It didn't matter. He was slick with his own blood, but it didn't matter. In the distance, he could see her, embraced by a halo of light, holding her hand out to him. Had she forgiven him? Would she take him to the halls of the Valiant? Then he felt steel in his belly, and his chest, and his back. And he lay down, and he couldn't see her anymore. He should go back to some of the choices he'd faced before. Maybe there were new paths that had opened up, like those doors he was opening up all over the map that took him to new treasures and around his enemies. But he'd learned another true thing. Zenobia still had feelings for him. The book's pages fluttered to the beginning once again. Faster than before? And he fell. The clouds parted over the Isles of Boreas. It was time to choose.
The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game changer.
Pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced. Renato knew that using it could go catastrophically wrong. But he was sure he could figure out how to use it safely. Also, a temple had risen out of empty desert. The Iblis stone was hidden there. It was a dangerous artifact. It could corrupt its user into a bloodthirsty monster. Maybe he could find a way to use it, to take its power without surrendering to its wickedness. And also, his old friend Lapino needed rescuing. Of course, Renato had a pretty strong suspicion that Lapino had betrayed the rebellion. And he had a gut feeling that he needed to use that to his advantage.
Renato finally realized that Lapino was a traitor to the cause.
And maybe Renato could use that somehow.
Renato couldn't quite put his paw on when he'd realized Lapino was working for the Empire. He'd never exactly seen Lapino sending coded messages to the palace, but he was sure. The rabbit had been on too many disastrous missions where he was the only survivor, or where he accidentally missed getting on the boat that went down to the abyss in flames. If Renato could prevent Lapino from getting back to the fleet with all the intelligence he'd probably gathered, it might be worth the trip. How had they come to this? They'd been on so many adventures together. Lapino had talked Renato out of prison at least 4 times, and Renato had rescued Lapino from at least 2 lynch mobs. That the rabbit resented him. Lapino was hilarious because he was so down on himself and everyone else. But behind the laughs, he wasn't a happy camper. Was this payback? Or did the Empire have his little white tail in a vice? Renato remembered when he'd first stolen one of these. Good times. There was a pleasant breeze coming through that door. Had it been closed before? Not everyone knew how to use magical gems. Of course, not everyone had magical gem gauntlets like he did.
He was more and more extraordinary. Lapino must be waiting at the end of the cemetery. Bernardo wanted badly to confront him for his treachery. But what good would that do him? Claw on him. Lapino would betray him. The call was dangerous. Bernardo had a fleeting idea that the two ideas went together somehow. And then it was gone again. Ah, damn ideas. They never stuck around when you needed them.
Look, it's not personal, but your mother wears army boots. On her ears.
Bloody and exhausted, Bernardo finally reached Lapino. The rabbit was practicing shuffling his favorite deck. Now that he knew what the rabbit was, there were a few things about him that Bernardo didn't find so amusing anymore. You sent me an urgent message saying that you're in danger. Oh, I am. The ravens are coming. Now, I got a clever plan to kidnap Zenobia. Bernardo wanted to clap shackles on the rabbit and shout, "You're a traitor, and I'm not falling for it." But if there was one thing Bernardo was sure of, it was that the core of the Sky Ripper was dangerous mostly to its user. If he could put it in the Emperor's hands, old Isengrim III might blow himself and his fleet up with it. Yes, that was it. Me? A traitor? I'm hurt, said Lapino. Why ever would you say that? We found your code book, said Bernardo. They hadn't, but he hoped Lapino would blow his cover. You got me, said Lapino. And you know what? I don't regret a thing. It's always about you, isn't it? You're the pretty hero. You get the girl, you get the medal, and what do I get? Rabbit food. I thought you liked rabbit food.
Go to hell,
Said Lapino. And he made a gesture. And 20 ravens came out of nowhere and stabbed Renato to death. He had tried something bold and paid the price for it. How had they come to this? They'd been on so many adventures together. Lapino had talked Renato out of prison at least 4 times, and Renato had rescued Lapino from at least 2 lynch mobs. But he'd always felt that the rabbit resented him. Lapino was hilarious because he was so down on himself and everyone else. But behind the laughs, he wasn't a happy camper. Was this payback? Or did the Empire have his little white tail in a vice? Hero wall, hero sword, firewall, fire extinguisher. Who leaves these chests everywhere? Wondered Renato. I should send him a thank you note. Ravens were landing everywhere from dropships. He'd better get moving. If they got to Lapino first, the rabbit would give the Empire all the intelligence he'd been stealing from the rebellion, and they'd probably give him a medal. He'd have to be very careful about how he played Lapino. At the slightest hint of danger, the mad rabbit would take off like a rabbit. Bloody and exhausted, Renato finally reached Lapino.
The rabbit was practicing shuffling his favorite deck.
Oh, I am. The ravens are coming. Now, I got a clever plan to kidnap Zenobia.
Renato wanted to clap shackles on the rabbit and shout, "You're a traitor, and I'm not falling for it." But if there was one thing Renato was sure of, it was that the core of the Sky Ripper was dangerous mostly to its user. If he could put it in the Emperor's hands, old Isengrim III might blow himself and his fleet up with it. Yes, that was it. Renato felt like a real hero, brave and smart. He told the rabbit all about the Sky Ripper's God's Eye core. "I'll go get the core while you attack Zenobia," he told the rabbit.
Oh, wait, I have an even better idea. I'll get the core and you attack Zenobia, said the rabbit.
"Right, yeah, that is better," agreed Renato. Perfect. The traitor would make sure the Emperor got the core. Now Renato just needed the Emperor to use the core. If he could only get something that the Emperor wanted very badly. Zenobia. He could save her and bait the Emperor at the same time. Right. Now, all Renato had to do was fight his way through Zenobia's invading troops, sneak onto her ship and into her bedroom, and kidnap her without any of her dozens of guards alerting her. Then, he would rely on her love for him to convince her how evil her father was, so she'd run away with him instead of going back to her father, who was going to blow himself up. It did sound a little risky. But Renato had a feeling it would work out somehow. It always did.
Sorry, mustache, thought Renato.
Or I could go that way, he thought. Two eyes, good. One eye, dead. Renato was halfway to Zenobia's encampment when Lapino showed up. He was disheveled and distraught.
They jumped us. I barely got away. Oh, they got the core.
Oh, it was all going according to plan, thought Renato. Now he just needed Zenobia on his side. Yes, that was even better. The Iblis Stone. Zenobia could get it. And then the Emperor would have to pursue them. Wait. No. The gem would corrupt anyone. Even her. That's it, he thought. Even Lapino. Even though Lapino was already a traitor. It would turn him against his secret master, the Emperor. He would try to make himself Emperor. And the Emperor would have to defend himself with the core. Boom. He was a super genius. This is terrible, Renato told the rabbit. If only I had gone for the Iblis Stone. But now it's lost in enemy territory. He handed Lapino a map. It gives the bearer so much power. We can only hope the Emperor never finds it. What was that? Said Lapino. I think someone's following us. I didn't hear anything. Rabbit ears. You go on ahead. I'll check it out. And with that, Lapino hopped off with the map.
Shall we dance? Good, the lead raven.
He knew the known knowns, and even some of the known unknowns. But he didn't know the unknown unknowns. You dig? Renato slinked through Zenobia's ship, making no sound at all. She was curled up on her bed. He'd forgotten how beautiful she was, how sleek, how soft. He tapped her on the shoulder with his sword. She was made of smoke, and he noticed he had a very solid blade to his throat. "Did you really think you could capture me?" purred a familiar voice. "I just wanted to chat," said Renato. "Did you ever wonder why the Emperor adopted you? He needs a sacrifice, someone who truly loves him, to make a bargain with the lost gods." "That's a vicious lie. He wants to bring them back." That's crazy. Why would anyone... They could make him immortal. An eater of souls. And with that, her eyes widened. She understood. Renato told her how he had rescued a priest whose order had been massacred. How he had slept in a burnt village. At midnight, the Emperor's victims had come to him in his dreams to tell him of the hideous eldritch rituals they'd been sacrificed in. He could still see those kittens and puppies, Their wide, sad eyes, their moist noses.
You can't prove that.
I've got a witness at the observatory. He couldn't tell her, not yet, why he was really here. He didn't want her to be anywhere near the fleet when her father blew himself and the Pino up. So he told her about how the Emperor's obscene rituals had raised ancient artifacts out of the land. How he'd followed the appalling trail of the hideous horrors His Majesty had perpetrated for the sake of his own immortality. Any of this ring a bell? He said.
He told me it was all lies.
You've always known when I was lying. I always hated that about you, said Renato. The rebellion had started after atrocities that the Empire hushed up. Renato had rescued a priest whose order had been massacred for one book. He had slept in a burnt village. Dead kittens and puppies had come to tell him what the Emperor had done to them. You shouldn't have.
Right.
Don't you think I'd know if my father started practicing black magic?
Why? Would you join in?
No. I'd destroy his books and I'd...
Oh, God. Okay, you're not completely wrong. They've resurrected one of his victims. Well, look, I mean, look, it's not exactly alive, but it can talk. A true witness, she said. It was a bit windy up here. Energy spheres. Easy to dodge, but boy did they sting if you didn't pay attention. The observatory was a burning hulk. Dead scientists and black feathers everywhere. The Ravens had taken special care to burn the reanimated witness to cinders. Zenobia stared at the carnage. He didn't want me to hear the witness, did he? I guess not. What's your plan? She asked. So, Renato explained his brilliant gambit. Sending Lapino to get the Iblis Stone, become super powerful and corrupted, provoke the Emperor into using the core against him, thus blowing up both of them, and hopefully the fleet too. Let me visit your council, she said, shaken. I want to help. Could he really trust her? Done it. He'd made Zenobia see how evil her father really was. He wished she didn't feel this urge to join in the rebellion. After all, he'd taken care of the Emperor, right? Yeah, but she'd always been conscientious like that. She told him she had to go somewhere first. So Renato gave her the location of the secret base, and they agreed to meet in the ruins. He had a very good feeling about this. What had Zenobia gone off to do? What was more important than meeting the rebel council? Had he made a mistake, sending her to the ruins? No. He knew they could trust each other. He could trust her because she never broke her word. And she could trust him because she could see right through him. Well, she'd probably be there well before him. She at least didn't have to fight her way through rainstorms of ravens. mysterious sword from the east made you so fast you could catch a fly with your chopsticks. If that's what you really wanted. Ooh, sparkly, thought Renardo. There was an inscription. Praise the sun. The sword felt even colder. As he came around the bend, there was Lapino. unconscious on the side of the path. And Renata could smell a familiar, sweet, smoky scent. Who? Zenobia. It had to be. She never used a combat spell when she could use drowsy gas. That meant she had the Iblis Stone. What would it do to her? She hated her father now. She'd kill him for sure. The council wouldn't mind if she killed the Emperor, but murdering her father would destroy her. He had to get to whatever ledge she was on and talk her down from it.
Hey, Frosty!
Time to die, he thought. And it was. Long stairs. So he was close to the rebel base. It was on fire. So far, so good.
Brilliant. Lovely. Hold that pose.
Everyone in the council chamber was dead. Zenobia stood shivering in the courtyard, drenched in blood. Why? He managed. They started arguing with me. I lost my temper and I wanted their blood. Well, not me. The stone did. Why did you take it from Lupino? I had a plan. You had a stupid plan, she said. I'm going to go kill my father now. No, you can't. You'll just take his place. You'll become worse than him. Get out of my way, or I'll kill you too. You won't kill me, he said. And I won't let you kill the Emperor. Enraged, she raised the sword. You hate him too? He could sense the Iblastone, yearning for his death. But she didn't strike. If you kill him, he'll destroy you. I know you. Shut up! She shouted, her sword trembling. I won't lose you again. Not for anything. Get away from me, he said, and he was very close. I can't lose you again. And he was in reach of her sword now. I hate him! I hate you too! I love you, he said for the very first time. And then she was weeping. He was holding her. The sword had dropped from her hand. He glanced at the Iblastone. It was no longer the black of the void. It looked like coal. No. It glowed, like a cinder. It was crackling, burning, crumbling into ashes. You've always loved me, haven't you? She said. She was weak. The stone had taken so much from her. Always, he said. She staggered as he helped her up. Let me take you away. Where? The island of Avalon. The sisters will heal you. He'll follow us. Then we need the Farfarer, the fastest ship in the Empire. The Empire had seized his ship. They'd have to take it back. Nice. That could be useful. Zenobia was in no shape to fight. But he never fought so well. He wasn't fighting for money or loot or a cause. He was fighting for her. For them. His sword danced, his feet flew, and the ravens recoiled from his ferocity. The platform used a hybrid propulsion system fueled by anti-gravity and wishful thinking. There it was, his beautiful skycraft, the Farfarer. They would fare very far indeed, beyond the Empire, beyond the reach of the Empire, to the mystical island of Avalon. He didn't know exactly where it was, but he knew he could find it. And they would find peace there. Second star on the right, and straight on till morning, laughed Zenobia. And they laughed together for the first time in a long time. done a barrel roll, he thought, as he died. But they did not go unnoticed. Scout ships lifted off, and the long lance of the Imperial flagship. Bernardo turned downwind to gain speed. The Raven ships could pursue, but they couldn't close. The Farspeaker croaked, "You return her and live!" "Go sacrifice yourself," yelled Bernardo. "Then you won't have her either." On the flagship, the Emperor was readying some arcane weapon. It couldn't be. It was the core. A devastating beam lanced out of the flagship. Bernardo zigzagged wildly to keep the Farfair out of it. Now the Raven scout ships were closing the distance, and the beam was getting closer too. Then came a blinding flash, and the air was searingly hot all around him. There was a thunderous, deafening roar. He could smell burnt oak and burnt feathers and burnt flesh. But when he could hear and see again, they were alive and unhurt. And they were alone in the sky. Zenobia embraced him. They had done it. Through luck and through love, they had won the war. "Avalon, here we come," he said as he held her arms wide in the prow of the boat and let her feel its speed. "Maybe the real Avalon is wherever we're together," she said. And so, after a bit of an argument, Bernardo and Zenobia went to one of the two Avalons. The one shrouded in mists, or the one in their hearts. But which one they went to, I'll never tell. He'd done it. He'd forged his own destiny. Well, he hadn't actually done it, but he knew what he would do. Bernardo smiled at the book. He practically wanted to kiss it. The kid's sacrifice hadn't been in vain. He'd saved the book and saved the world. Bernardo owed him and his mother so much. Bernardo lowered the mainsail and let the Farfarer shoot forward in the breeze. Second star to the right, and straight on till morning. This time, he would win.
Well guys, I'm back, but this is all for today, but join me tomorrow with more gameplay, so until take care everybody, bye bye.